So are you saying he's a slave to Benjamin Netanyahu?
So I don't think it's as simple as he's under the control of Netanyahu. But, you could summarize it that way and you wouldn't be totally inaccurate.
On Thursday, he called you low IQ, a nut job, a fool. Also, he suggested you should see a good psychiatrist. Are you going to continue to love him?
As I've said, I feel sorry for him as I do for all slaves.
Tucker Carlson not only called President Donald Trump a slave to Israel, which he obviously is, he also got into a rather testy exchange with BBC anchor Victoria Derbyshire. And we're gonna get to the details on that in just a moment. But before we do, Cenk, do you think Trump is a slave to Israel?
Well, obviously. But to be fair, most of our politicians are.
True.
So I agreed with everything Tucker said in that interview that was about 20 minutes long. And what's really interesting is as you watch it, guys, I want you to notice how the anchor is constantly trying to get Tucker, right? Mm-hmm. So she came in with a mentality, I'm gonna prove he's an anti-Semite and make sure he never criticizes Israel again. Like, it's so obvious, and Tucker just dismantles her.
Now, before we get to this anchor making passive-aggressive anti-Semite claims against Tucker Carlson, we need to talk a little more about this.
Have you completely fallen out with him over this war then?
Well, I haven't fallen out with him. I mean, I've known him for decades. I've always liked him. And I think anyone who spent time with him likes him. I feel sorry for him as I do for all slaves. He is not free in this moment at all to do what he thinks is best for himself or his country.
What do you mean?
No, he's not free. And we learned that yesterday when Donald Trump announced a ceasefire, clearly with relief, and made its terms or most of its terms public. And then that ceasefire ended within 2 hours because Israel intentionally violated the terms by attacking not just southern Lebanon, but the city of Beirut.
So are you saying he's a slave to Benjamin Netanyahu?
So I don't think it's as simple as he's under the control of Netanyahu. But you could summarize it that way and you wouldn't be totally inaccurate.
I mean, he's clearly under the control of Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu and Mossad were in the Situation Room in the days leading up to the US going to war with Iran on behalf of Israel. Okay, Netanyahu is the one who just today declared that he is in talks with Vice President J.D. Vance and members of our executive branch literally every single day to get updates on what we're up to in the Middle East, how we're prosecuting this war against the Iranians. Obviously, the federal government is under the control of the Israeli government. And it's about time that Americans wake up to that reality and actually do something about it. Because you don't live in a sovereign country when your president is controlled by a foreign leader. And that's what's happening right now. That's my take on it. Cenk, your thoughts? I think you're muted, Cenk.
Unmuted there, yeah. Yeah, so look, this is one of those Trope tripwires. You know how the Iranians put the mines in the Strait of Hormuz so you can't get past it? The Israelis put trope mines all around the politics of Israel so you can't get past it. Every criticism triggers a trope. So for example, you say Big Pharma controls Congress. That's obvious. They've given billions of dollars to the Congress and we can't negotiate drug prices, fine. Big oil, big defense, fine, everybody's fine. You get to, the Israeli lobby is given to 94% of Congress. They go, Trump. You can't say, you're saying the Jews control everything. No, I didn't say that. I said this lobby, like all other lobbies that are as large as them, controls Congress and the president, which they're given over $300 million to. Trope, anti-Semite, nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so we're gonna get to the smears that this anchor tries to engage in passive aggressively because, well, I mean, look, if you wanna call someone an anti-Semite, do it openly, clearly. Instead, she relied on some passive aggressive ways of framing her questions, which we'll get to in just a minute. But later in the interview, this BBC anchor, again, Victoria Derbyshire, pretended as though critics of Israel are not at all being penalized in the UK, which they definitely are, and I'm gonna show you evidence of it in just a minute. But first, take a look at this.
Well, Keir Starmer is every bit as enslaved as Donald Trump is. It is illegal. It is a crime for which you can be arrested in Britain right now, criticizing Israel. If you say you're for Palestine action, you can be arrested. A lot of people have been arrested. So in other words, it is not legal in Britain to criticize another country. And that tells you about Britain's sovereignty.
Okay,
It doesn't have any. Its prime minister has no sovereignty.
Mr.
Those are
Carlson,
facts. I have family
that is not true. And in terms of this war, I'm specifically asking.
Wait, I'm sorry. What is not true about that?
Sorry,
have people not been arrested in Britain for criticizing Israel? They certainly have been. There's videotape of it.
If I may, Palestine Action is a proscribed group. It is banned.
Well, why is it banned? Now, the UK argues that it engages in terroristic activity while defending the Israelis who actually engage in terroristic activity, but okay. I wanna show you who the so-called terrorists of this group happen to be. Take a look at this.
Armed with pens, paper, and a lot of patience, thousands of activists staged a sit-down protest in support of Palestine Action, a group banned in July 2025 under the Terrorism Act.
The situation we have at the moment is absurd. I think it was absurd when they arrested the people before. We've got a 1,000% rise in the number of terrorists in this country just based on old people being arrested for holding a sign.
According to the Metropolitan Police, 523 people were arrested for showing support for proscribed organisation.
Yeah, it's a lot of elderly people holding signs getting arrested. They don't look like terrorists to me.
Guys, when we started TYT, everyone assumed that the hard part would be figuring out their equipment, and that was a challenge for me, or this new thing called YouTube. Not easy, but we did it. But those were the relatively easy parts. The real challenge was playing every role at once. Host, producer, sales team, marketing. I was drowning in jobs I never even knew I signed up for. If you're building a business, you all know the drill. That never-ending to-do list can swallow you whole. What you really need is a partner. Someone who handles the heavy lifting so you can get back to why you started your business in the first place. For us, that partner is Shopify. Need a stunning online store that actually looks like your brand? Shopify gives you hundreds of beautiful pro-built templates. Pick one and make it yours. No coding degree required. God knows I don't have one. Need to get the word out? Shopify plugs you straight into email campaigns and social media tools that help you find customers wherever they hang out. And what about the messy back-end stuff? Tracking inventory, managing returns, shipping across borders. Shopify handles the logistics like the global commerce expert that they are. Everything you need, payments, analytics, day-to-day operations, lives in one place. No more juggling a dozen different services or apps. Start your business today with the industry's best business partner, Shopify, and start hearing. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/TYT. Go to shopify.com/TYT. That's shopify.com/TYT.
So Tucker Carlson was absolutely right about how people get penalized, arrested, treated poorly by their own government and law enforcement for having the audacity to speak out against war crimes and atrocities committed by the Israeli government and military. The fact that the BBC anchor pretended like this reality doesn't exist tells you everything you need to know about this particular program. I wouldn't trust it. She doesn't live in reality, or she just flat out decides it's okay to lie to her own audience about the facts on the ground. Cenk, back to you.
Yeah, so I thought that was so telling, Anna, because she's like, what you mean? It's outrageous. But wait, hold on. But did they get arrested for criticizing Israel? They did. That's a fact. So why do you want to cover up the news? Isn't that weird, guys? And she's like emotional about it too.
Totally.
And like, okay, so maybe in Britain they don't have the same kind of money in politics as we do, but in America, anybody can buy a US politician. What they're saying is you're allowed to criticize everyone buying a US politician except the state of Israel. And these are not people working for the Israeli government or their PR department. These are anchors on BBC, and then of course in America it's even worse. So why are they weirdly protecting Israel and literally lying while they're doing it? It's super strange, guys.
Finally, we turn to the passive-aggressive moment where clearly she's trying to accuse Tucker Carlson of being an anti-Semite, and he provides a masterclass on how to handle these types of smears. Take a look.
Pretty much everything that you've said in our conversation, Tucker Carlson, you have put at the door of the Israeli government. Now, to some people, that will be evidence that you are anti-Semitic. You are anti-Jewish.
Oh, I know. I'm very anti-Semitic and anti-Jewish. Well, first of all, the state of Israel does not speak for all Jews at all, despite its claims. It does not. There are many, many Jews, many of whom I know, who don't think the Israeli government of Benjamin Netanyahu speaks for them.
No,
I'm speaking of the government, not a religion.
Hold on. Because I wasn't suggesting that.
Of course you were suggesting
what
that.
I was suggesting was that a lot of the
I've been in
things
this
that you
business
discussed
longer
today,
than you, and I understand what a slur looks like. And you're attempting to call me an anti-Semite in a passive-aggressive way. Some people would say that. Well, I'm responding to your slur and saying that it's untrue. It does not apply to me. Doubtless there are anti-Semites who don't like Israel. I'm not an anti-Semite. I don't hate Israel. The Israeli government, this is documented, and I saw it personally, steered the United States into a war that hurts the United States and the world. I'm offended by that. I didn't want it, and I'm mad about it now. I have every right to feel that way. That does not make me an anti-Semite, despite your insinuation.
So Tucker Carlson says, I'm not an anti-Semite, I don't hate Israel. I do hate Israel, and I'm also not an anti-Semite. Israel is not representative of all Jewish people, and in fact, the actions of that government and the current culture within the majority of citizens living in Israel is not representative of Jewish people or Judaism worldwide, okay? You can hate a foreign country. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person, as long as you can explain why it is that you don't have an affinity for that country. And for me, it's the fact that they steal land, they have an expansionist policy that requires slaughtering people, displacing people. They're incredibly entitled. They think that they're entitled to our money, our soldiers. Yeah, I've got no love for Israel. That doesn't mean that I'm an anti-Semite. I don't have hatred toward Jews. I have hatred toward the current society, okay, culture, government, and military of Israel. And that's totally fine. I don't think that makes you a hateful person. But Cenk, what do you think?
Yeah, a couple things here. So when the Saudis chopped up Washington Post columnist, I hated the Saudi government. Did that mean that I hated the Saudi people? Who would be that irrational? I mean, especially if you're on the left and you think there's no differences between the races and religions and backgrounds. Nobody hates the Saudi people. We hate the Saudi government for dismembering a person. Really, that's complicated? It's not complicated. There are people who are pretending that that's what it means, are pretending. They're lying to you on purpose to protect Israel, okay? So number two, I'm gonna give you a stunning fact. Did you know that 63% of Jewish Americans say they love Israel, but are against the current Israeli government? They're opposed to the current Israeli government. 63%. That's the great majority of Jewish Americans.
That's a lot of anti-Semites, as she would say.
Yeah, so are 63% of Jews in America anti-Semites? That's insanity, right? But the pro-Israel crowd doesn't care. They don't care what Jewish Americans think. They don't care what anybody thinks. All they're gonna do is anti-Semite. And you see it here with their trained dogs, the news anchors. So I'm gonna get back to that because I have a controversial opinion on that that'll make her head explode. So you can look forward to that in a second. And by the way, I'm gonna go to London in June. Come, interview me, see how it turns out for you. Okay, so now the last point that's important before I get to the controversy. She said when, it sounds like you're saying that Israel's behind everything, hence you must be an anti-Semite. Now hold on. Nobody said that Israel's behind higher drug prices or oil subsidies or your flat tire. Nobody's talking about that. No, we're talking about foreign policy. And they were specifically talking about the war with Iran. Well, Israel is behind that. That's actually an acknowledged fact. And Israel's behind a lot of things. So is Big Pharma. Big Pharma controls our drug policy. And if you're in the middle of a conversation about drugs, you're like, well, Big Pharma controls that and Big Pharma controls that. Nobody would go, oh my God, you anti-pharmacist, right? Like, no, of course, when you buy politicians, you control that sector of politics. So Israel has bought our politicians to control that sector of politics. These are not controversial opinions. These are very normal, benign opinions. But when it comes to Israel, all of the television anchors, everybody in mainstream media is trained to flip out, to feign outrage, to smear any opponent of Israel as an anti-Semite and say things like, "Oh, all right, so you're saying that Israel's behind everything? You're an anti." All right. Well, so why the histrionics? And now the opinion they'll find controversial. Honestly, there's an effort to intimidate everyone in media by a group of very small Jewish Americans and Jews across the world who act like thugs. Okay. So now they don't represent the overwhelming 98% of Jews are just plumbers and dentists and have their regular jobs and nobody's coordinating with them and they didn't do anything wrong at all.
Right, it's just that this small group is giving the rest of the Jewish population a really bad name, actually, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
But don't tell me they don't exist. They stalk us. They try to get Anna's husband fired. They try to hurt our business. They try to, and I go to Muslim American events, and almost every Muslim can tell you a story of once they slightly criticized Israel and how somehow some guy pops out of the woods and threatens their jobs, their careers, their well-being. So what a lot of other Jewish Americans and others don't know is that there is like this reign of terror, and especially in media, if anyone slightly criticized Israel, they were definitely going to get fired until about 2 years ago. And even now, they've all been trained. Remember, your whole life and your whole career is on the line. You better protect Israel. Otherwise, we're gonna call you an anti-Semite and destroy you. Are there people like that? Yes, definitely. There's a whole cottage industry of them. And that's why all of our news reporters and anchors don't do any news reporting. They're like, oh, Israel's great, Israel's the greatest Jews. Everybody shut up. Because they're so afraid that their careers and their lives are gonna be ruined. So is it time to have an honest conversation about that? Or are we gonna pretend that these thugs don't exist when they most definitely do exist?
Absolutely, I like the honest conversations. And I'm not interested in being a mouthpiece or being someone who's controlled by a group of thugs or a small mob of people who make demands that I lie to my audience. That's never gonna happen, regardless of the threats lodged against us.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.